So this is now our third and final part of this little trilogy I call, well, I don't know. Uh, I'll look into at least the current reactions from the Republican Party. In our first video, we had a look at the pressure that had been applied by pro-European Republicans on Trump to change his stance of the stuff he said about Ukraine. How much he will hold on that, I don't know. Time still, of course, does remain to be seen, but there's still pressure being put on Trump by those pro-European Republicans. Then, of course, you come over to the fact that you have this now galvanizing, yet not really fully formed yet, Republican resistance to Trump, really understanding that, hold on, this guy is breaking a lot of norms that, if get broken, could be very, very hard to fix and could eventually lead to some really negative stuff happening that, well, the Republicans really don't want to happen. And now, of course, I think you get onto the final part in all this, because I think this is the part that ties it all together. Why did you have so many Republicans who privately have said they hate and despise Trump, but they will not stand up, they will not speak out of him because they fear him? Look what happened to Liz Cheney. Look what happened to any other Republican. They have either A, left the party completely, or, like Marco Rubio, they've bent the knee. He is now serving in the Trump administration. So it is very, very bizarre, but there is a reason why they are so terrified. And it is because, as we're about to see, they are scared of the political consequences for standing up to Trump, but also worried increasingly about political violence being visited upon them, not by anti-Trump people, but by the pro-Trump people. That's what terrifies them more. Donald Trump's rabid MAGA fan base. So before we do get on more into this, please do remember to click the like, the share, and the subscribe button. Then, like I say, down below, there's my Patreon page. There's a Buy Me Coffee link where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie all these three videos into a playlist. Maybe, who knows, maybe it'll expand as we go on, because I think having a look at the Republican Party, how it maybe warps and changes, I expect maybe at some point in the future there might be some sort of like Republican civil war over Trump. How that will develop, how that will change, I don't know. But if it does break out, it'll be very interesting to look at, because that will have a lot of impacts on America, American politics, and especially even on us, believe it or not, over here in Europe as well. So let's crack on then into this, coming from Vanity Fair. They're scared shitless. The threat of political violence now informing Trump's grip on Congress. So, in the past week, Donald Trump has now signaled his desire to rule like a strongman rather than a president constrained by constitutional norms. Pretty much sums it all up, really. That is literally what they are now facing. And it is now, I think, spooking a lot of Republicans, which is a good thing. Last Friday, Trump's vice president, J.D. Vance, scolded the Democratic NATO allies and met with the leader of Germany's extreme right ADF party. On Saturday, Trump declared on social media, who saves his countries does not violate any law. That in itself, as a quote, very, very worrying indeed. I've often said you shouldn't focus on like what happened to Germany and their slide into authoritarian rule in like the 1930s. You should, I think, be more looking at what happened to Japan, how Japan had its own slide into their own, authoritarian, fascist rule. That, I think, is far more applicable to what's going on in the United States than I think the Germany example is. So go watch Extra History's video on that. They did a very, very good series on that. And I think you'll see a lot of the parallels going on that replicate more of the imperialist Japan rather than the slide of Germany into Adolf Hitler. But again, different systems, not 100% compatible. But if you watch it, I think you'll agree there's a lot more similarities, I think, going on there as what you see today going on in America. But back to this. So this Thursday, Trump also blamed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for the brutal war he launched that was launched by the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, saying he should have never started it. Trump then falsely said of Zelensky when, in fact, Putin invaded Ukraine back in February of 2022. The US president then doubled down on the feud on Wednesday, calling Zelensky a dictator. And of course, by Friday, he completely changed his position thanks to the pressure put on him by Republican, by pro-EU or pro-European, shall we say, Republicans. So, Democrats are in the minority, both in the House and the Senate, which means the federal courts and the congressional Republicans are now the only guardrails on Trump's second term. And so far, the judicial system seems to be holding, though a Trump-packed now Supreme Court is now destined to rule on all manner of alleged overreach in the coming months. And those cases are going to be one to watch. Those are going to be one to watch because, as it says next, big question, will Trump actually abide by those rulings or will he just go against them regardless? And then what do you do if you've got a president who is going against the ruling of the Supreme Court? That is uncharted territory, completely uncharted territory. Republican Congress, however, do have at least have now consistently folded, approving all of Trump cabinet picks, such as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, two people who should never be allowed into any position of power ever. There's already a measles outbreak, I think, in Texas. That's RFK's job to sort out. But of course, how do you sort that? You do more vaccinations. But of course, he's against vaccinations. That is going to lead to a lot of deaths, a lot of trouble in there because of that guy is in power. Tulsi Gabbard, why on earth they went through and picked her, I have no idea, but oh boy, that could have its own consequences maybe further down the line as well. So, with only, of course, a faint whiff of pushback on some of their boundary-scorching backgrounds, the confirmation now predictably short-circuited many Democratic observers. But the rolling headliners of late have only just been some of the Republicans decrying what seems now to be an erosion of the checks and balances in recent weeks. These are the heirs of the greatest generation, and they all turned out to be the worst generation, says Stuart Stevens, who served now as the chief strategist on Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign and has since left the GOP, joining the anti-Trump Lincoln Project as a senior advisor, saying it is tempting to compare Republicans to the Prussian aristocrats in the 1930s Germany. But the Prussian aristocrats were more responsible. They were dealing with civil unrest and the threat of communist takeover. Republicans today have historically low unemployment, a record stock market. What is their excuse? They've got none. That's the thing. And I think it comes down to, and I would love to speak to one of these people in the, in the Lincoln Project. And it would be, I think, a fascinating conversation to have. I might try and reach out, see if we can maybe get something, because it would be fascinating to sort of watch and see, have this conversation, just like what is going on. But there is, I think, just a thing I see is the Republicans have always held on to power, and they've held on to power by literally any way they possibly can. And I think, even though Trump is absolutely incredible bad. They don't care because they're in power. And this is the exact same way our Conservative Party thought as well with Boris Johnson. Oh, we'll give him a chance. If he wins, great. If not, we can get rid of him. Oh, he's won the biggest majority for us in a long time. Yeah, we'll keep on backing him. And they kept on backing Boris until eventually they all started to say, enough is enough. When will those Republicans finally turn around? What will be their red line where they turn around and say, enough is enough? Currently, I don't see where that red line is or where that will be. So, political survival is one. Senate and House Republicans know Trump will orchestrate the running of a primary challenger backed by Elon Musk's unlimited resources if a member now defies him. But this is not the whole story of the Republican subservience to the president. In private, Republicans talk about their fear that Trump might incite his MAGA followers to commit political violence against them if they don't rubber stamp his actions. They are scared shitless about death threats and Gestapo-like stuff, a former member of Trump's first-term administration tells me. And yeah, when you've got stuff like that absolute terrifying attorney general and the fact that you've got Kash Patel in as head of the FBI, oh, what's that? Alleged corruption? Go and investigate him. Doesn't matter if there's no evidence. We'll just go in and investigate him. Make his life a living hell. Hey, if there's no evidence, where we've got, where the prosecution, we can make up evidence, right? It's terrifying stuff. The fact that those two people are in that position. Very terrifying stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if they eventually overstep a boundary or something like that in the future. That will be terrifying. So, according to one source with direct knowledge of the events, North Carolina Senator Tom Tills told people that the FBI warned him about credible death threats when he was considering voting against Pete Hegseth's nomination for defense secretary. And just imagine this. These people are receiving death threats for not backing Trump. This is exactly like what happened in Japan, and not 1930s Germany. It's more 1930s Japan. Like I say, go watch that extra history series they did about that. Fascinating, interesting to read about because it's not something that tends to be brought up. Tills ultimately did provide the critical 50th vote to then confirm former Fox and Friends host to lead the Pentagon. But according to a source, Tills had said that if people wanted to understand Trump, they should read the 2016 book Snakes in Suits, When Psychopaths Go to Work. When asked for commentary for the story, a spokesperson for Tills said that it was false and that the senator had been recommended the book in that capacity. The FBI said it had no comment. Well, the FBI is not going to comment now, given the fact how Kash Patel's in charge. No one in the FBI will speak out against that. And Tills, well, you can tell he's terrified. He's scared. You can tell they're all scared. And I think there will come a moment where someone will put their head up of the parapets. Something will happen. And either they will be the beacon in the Republican Party that is standing up to Trump and they will succeed very well, or something very bad will happen. And either way, both those will start movements, I think, fully against Trump. I think that will be the moment when many Republicans turn around and just go, right, enough is enough. So, from the moment Trump descended his golden escalator back in June of 2015 to announce his run for president, he injected menace into his political rhetoric. On the campaign trail, he talked about wanting to punch protesters in the face. During his first term, he praised Montana's then representative, Greg Gainforth, for physically attacking Guardian reporter Ben Jacobs back in 2017, saying, "Any guy that can do that and body slam is my type." Trump said. Ganforth then later pled guilty to the misdemeanor assault and then received 6 months deferred jail sentence. Again, just like in Japan. You look at a lot of these people who did and went against, newspapers, people who were trying to get proper democracy done, making sure the rule of law was in place. They'd end up in prison, and then the judge would be forced, because, as Trump said, hey, he who saves his country has done nothing wrong. You would be surprised how well that applies to that period of Imperial Japan. So, when the protest then erupted, of course, in Minneapolis after the officer murdered George Floyd in 2020, Trump called protesters thugs. He said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. That phrase then echoed a remark made back in 1960 by a Miami police chief associated with now stoking racial tensions in the city. Trump later claimed he was not aware of its origins. Back in September of 2020, the debate against Joe Biden, Trump then refused to condemn the white supremacist violence and told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. Again, you see all this violent rhetoric. I say the analogies, people keep on talking about, what went on in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. As I keep on saying to a lot of people, go look at what happened to Japan during that period of time as well. It has a lot more, I think, applicable similarities going on, quite frankly. So, January the 6th, of course, then further catalyzed the GOP fear of Trump-inspired violence. Romney told his biographer, McKay Coppins, that the undercurrent of anxiety thwarted Republican efforts to formally punish Trump for his role in inciting the riot. One Republican congressman confided to Romney that he wanted to vote for Trump's second impeachment, but chose not to out of fear for his family's safety. Doesn't surprise me. Does not surprise me from what we've been seeing so far already. At what point, I've often said one of the biggest problems with the Democrats is they don't have a spine to really stand up and really take it, to go on the attack. The Republicans do, but they are cowards, political cowards. And the second, they are the bite, the bark is bigger than their bite, shall we say? And this is proving that when they are generally threatened, you'd think, given the Republicans are constantly like attack, they'd be reacting to this. Oh no, their bark is bigger than their bite. And the Democrats really need to, like I say, find their spine and go on the attack themselves, because these Republicans will back down, and so will Trump. His bark is the biggest of them all, and his bite is tiny. So Coppins, of course, then later wrote in his book, when one senator, a member of leadership, said that he was leaning towards voting to convict, others then urged him to reconsider, saying, you can't do that. Romney recalled someone saying, you think of your personal safety, another said. Think of your children. The senator eventually decided they were right. So it generally does look like that moment where they could have impeached Trump and gotten rid of him permanently, like dealt with him once and for all, they were terrified of what might happen afterwards. They are now having to live with the consequences of a second Trump term, where they are seeing all these political norms, all these horrible political people he has appointed. They're even more terrified now. So, former Wyoming representatives and, of course, very prominent anti-Trump Republican Liz Cheney told CNN that the House GOP members confided in her that they were now afraid for their own security, afraid in some instances for their lives. Representative Jansen Crow of Colorado told NBC News after January the 6th, I had a lot of conversations with Republican colleagues last night, and a couple of them broke down in tears. saying that they are now afraid for their lives if they vote for this impeachment. That should not have happened. And if the Republicans had spoken out against this, what was going on, maybe things might have been different. Maybe. Who knows? But that's in the past. You've got to deal with what you've got now. Republican Peter Majere, and then, of course, Michigan representative, told the Atlantic writer Tim Alberta back in 2021 that one colleague seemed to have nearly had a nervous breakdown over fears of being harmed by MAGA supporters if he were to vote to certify the 2020 election results, saying he had asked his new college if he was okay. The Alberta then reported. The member responded that he was not, and that it was no matter of his belief in the legitimacy of the election, he could no longer vote to certify the results because he feared for his family's safety. Remember, that wasn't a hypothetical. You were casting a vote after seeing with your own two eyes what some of these people are capable of, Maria says. If they are willing to come after you inside the US Capitol, what will they do when you're at home with your kids? So there is now a strong fear, as you can clearly see, mob rule. If you've noticed, Trump had a exchange recently with one of, I think it was the Democrat senator of Maine, where he basically threatened if you don't comply with this stuff, I'll cut your funding. He said, I think he said something to the effect of, who are you following? What rule are you following? Well, she said, no, I'm following federal and state law. And then Trump turned around and said, I am federal and state law. If you don't do what I say, I'll cut your funding. To which she turned around and said, okay, I'll see you in court. I really do think something bad is going to happen, and it is going to be because of something like that. I really do think something bad is going to happen. And it's going to happen to either a member of Congress, a senator, something bad is going to happen. I get the feeling in my bones something bad is going to happen, and it is all going to be because of Trump. And maybe that's the point where the Republicans will go, enough is enough. Maybe. Don't know. But if they're this scared already, how scared are they going to be even more if it actually happens? Anyway, Trump's mass pardoning of the January 6th participants has, of course, now regenerated those events in Republicans' minds of late, saying a guy sends a mob into your workplace to kill you, and you're okay with that, Stephen tells me, speaking about his frustration with congressional Republicans. Stephen says that the clemencies send a message to the Republicans that Trump will defend those who commit personal violence in his name. I talked to Lincoln Project donors, Stephen said. They are powerful and wealthy people, and I can tell you that a percentage of them are talking about leaving the country. Doesn't surprise me. You don't support Trump? Your name's on the list. So, the Republican Party is united, a White House spokesperson said. Still, some do say that Republicans are using the threats of violence as now cover. Bill Christoph, the co-founder of the Never Republican outlet, The Bulwark, tells me the Republicans could even ignore these threats if they wanted to. Crystal was subject to online harassment earlier back in February after Elon Musk falsely promoted claims on X that Crystal received money from USD Aid, a foreign agency recently gutted by the Government Department of Efficiency. I never read the comments or the notification, he tells me. Senators can probably get quite a bit of protection if they need it, so I'm a little less sympathetic. And that's true. If they wanted protection, they could get it. Imagine what would happen if, there was this threat, they asked for protection, and then Donald Trump revoked that protection. Do you not think there would be massive public outcry at that? But hey, I think something bad is going to happen. I think something really bad is going to happen. And I feel that it really is a ticking time bomb. Looking into all this, looking into what's been going on in like the Republican Party, some of the stuff that has been said like behind the scenes as what we've just seen there and said. But even when asked, we know this had been said to you, or you had said this to the person. I never said that. I never said that at all. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of fear in the Republican Party. A lot of fear. But just as we saw with our own Conservative Party over here with Boris Johnson, they were willing to go and follow him for quite a long time because he won that very large majority for them. However, there came a point where enough was enough. You look at the whole Partygate scandal. The party was still with him. Even after all that stuff came out, oh, don't worry, he's got that electoral magic. They were still with him for a very long time. And it wasn't until later you got all the stuff with Chris Pincher and everything else started coming out. Other conservatives trying to save protect their fellow member of parliament, and Boris Johnson was involved in it, and it's just like eventually it did just became enough was enough, because you literally had situations where they had gone to Boris, asked them what was the truth. They would be literally live on air being interviewed, and news would come out that would contradict what they had been told, and they were made constantly to be look like fools. And that was eventually it. They just broke this just happened again and again, and eventually just got fed up with it and just like, right, we can't have it anymore. We can't take it anymore. We're gonna, enough is enough. They finally got rid of him. They tried to vote him out. He literally, sailed through by the skin of his teeth. And then eventually it was like, well, sorry, we're not going to form a cabinet with you. He'd appoint someone new and they would instantly turn around and just going, you should resign, Boris. I'm resigning. And that was the situation Boris was in. And he was in a situation where he was literally forced to resign. And yet he still thinks somehow he can come back. But at least the Conservative MPs are at least of one opinion. You can't bring Boris Johnson back. No way. No way. But who knows? Will the same thing maybe happen in the Republican Party? Maybe. But I think it would be a series of very, very bad events that will finally make them realize, like, why are we going along with this guy? Like, why are we still supporting him? Like, what, after all this, how can we still stand by this guy and still support this? There will come a point. What will be the straw that breaks the camel's back? I can't tell you. I don't know what that is. I think it might be a very serious incident that will. And unfortunately, when it does happen, who knows what the consequences of that are going to be. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.